This is I Love Black People Radio on HUR Voices, Sirius XM Channel 141. I Love Black People is more than a radio show. I Love Black People is a call from our ancestors to protect us from racial profiling all across the world. Go to iloveblackpeople.com and become a member today. Membership empowers you to live fearlessly and protect Black people globally from racism and xenophobia. Join us today and become a member of our global network with an online global green book with Black-owned and Black-friendly businesses to protect you and your community. Membership is free, and with you, we will become 10 million strong worldwide. I am because we are. Special thanks to Aflac for supporting I Love Black People Radio.
Greetings and welcome to another edition of I Love Black People. I just want to thank all of our members and supporters that follow us on social media as well as every episode and giving us feedback. And for those who are new, definitely you can go to info at iloveblackpeople.com, shoot us an email. My personal Instagram is Sinclair Skinner, one word, or you can catch us on Twitter. I Love Black People, and that's PPLE. I mean, just PPL. And we're Facebook, all over. And of course, our website, iloveblackpeople.com. Today, we wanted to tackle something that, as we get older, it sometimes gets a little difficult to discuss. But I've recently attended quite a few funerals and have had friends who have parents who passed, and I've had friends pass. And I know we're in this post pandemic, and we've had loved ones that have passed because of this whole COVID crisis that we've been through. And a lot of times we don't talk about the consequences of that. And of course, as business people in technology, insurance, and people talk about life insurance and whole life, term life, and we can talk about the financial well-being and make sure you take care of the costs. And I think those things are all important. And there's a social toll, emotional toll. I think sometimes we don't really discuss either. With with our parents, those of us who are still blessed to have them as they get older and dealing with the issues of dementia and Alzheimer's and other things that to help them in their quality of life as they get older. And how do we handle those things in a way that's respectful of them, as well as allows us to respect our spouses and our loved ones as we continue our life's journey. And I just wanted to make sure, just to be able to touch on some of these things and kind of give you some feedback on some of the takeaways and thoughts that from some of these experiences. And this most recent one, a good friend of mine attended Howard University, and his mom passed while he was literally there with her. And she was an amazing lady. She was friends with all of his friends. So anytime we would see him, or she would be in town, she in DC, she would come to Congressional Black Caucus Foundation events and get dressed up, and really was someone who enjoyed life so much. And he literally made sure that she was taking care of every aspect of her latter years. And her homegoing, her passing happened literally while he was at her bedside. And I've known plenty of situations where many folks didn't have that opportunity, where either their loved one passed suddenly, and you wonder how were their last moments, or it could have been like a accident of sorts, real tragic. I had one of my frat brothers have a death very similar to that, with a car accident for his grandmother. Like, we're literally living in this space that we all know that none of us is getting out of here alive. Like, I think we know that in the front of our minds or the back of our minds, but in the front of our minds, none of us want to leave. So it's kind of one of those, was everybody wants to go to heaven, but no one wants to die, or something. It was a, don't let me mess it up. But with all these things, like, those last moments, I had my godmother passed away. And one of the things that happened, she was actually at Howard University Hospital in Washington, D.C. And the doctors asked if I wanted to, put her on life support. And I didn't have the context of life support because I was her caregiver. I didn't get, but when they do life support, even if it's just, and they'll tell you it's just may just, help extend their life for just a few more days or a week or so. But they put this thing in their throat so they can breathe, and then they hold their arms down where they can't grab it. So it's literally they're like laying there. They can't talk to you anymore once they do that, and they got their arms tied down so they can't remove it. So they're kind of like in this very precarious and kind of like unfortunate position. They're on their back. Even if people like to sleep on their side, they can't because their hands are held down. And I never understood the significance of that. When you say, would you like them to be on life support? My godmother was very loquacious. She loved to talk. And in her last days, she was trying to write and do things to try to like say her last thoughts. And, it was unfortunate that I think I made a bad decision because I think she would have rather been able to share her last thoughts and wishes instead of having the additional time where she literally ultimately succumbed to cancer. And these are things that sometimes are difficult to talk about, but I think it's important as we try to improve the quality of lives of those that we've who've loved us so much. I think that was another thing that from this funeral. Our parents, we sometimes, I think right now you see so many people talking about financial wealth and how you pass down, legacy and how much money. But if we really think about it as a community, our heroes, we never based our heroes on how much money they had. If we really, really think about the folks that we really admired, it wasn't about how many degrees they had, how much money they had. It literally was something about their character. When we think about Harriet Tubman, we don't think about how much money she had or how many degrees. Or when we think about, Fannie Lou Hamer or any, of some of the giants that we've had in our community, we really think about their character, who they are as a people. And one of the things, being a Gen X person, the pastor, this brother was amazing who did the ceremony. He was a Howard alum, brother named Marshall Mitchell. He has a church out of Philadelphia, one of the oldest churches there. And he really spoke to that generation who had us, the baby boomers. And even if they don't get any trophies, there's no awards. The things that our parents did, the things they went through, they were born into an apartheid United States. For those of us who were based in the United States, they were born in apartheid, and the way they carry that and their behavior, you would have thought they came through. Everything was just wonderful because they didn't carry that bitterness like that. And so often they carried a level of pride and resilience that they instilled in us, but they instilled it in a way that we sometimes may miss it because they're our mom and our dads, and those who have both parents or not, that generation of folks as they now are getting in their 70s, 80s, and 90s, there's no ceremony giving them the trophy for experiencing Jim Crow and making it through segregation to have us as children through this age of the new millennium and all that. None of that do we hear. If our parents weren't good singers or good dancers or played sports well, the likelihood of them being acknowledged for their amazingness or recognized for their achievements probably is very little. And many of them work jobs, where they again might have been passed over for promotions or not, properly compensated as their other counterparts, but they still came home every night and gave us the best life they could give to us. And I think even in thinking about traditional spirituality in the African traditional, or even in the Americas, they always talk about how each generation that comes here with a purpose, and then whatever that generation doesn't do, the next generation is here to fulfill what was not done prior. And I think sometimes, people get caught up in maybe some generational chauvinism where they think one generation is better than the other. But I think we all stand on the shoulders of those that came before us. And particularly in the Black community, we don't often get a chance to recognize those achievements because the the context is so, it's when you look at, again, in the case of my good friend's mom, the things that they had to go through, not just dealing with the racism, dealing with sexism, the misogyny in the world, where, getting a job. And he grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. So Cleveland is one of those cities that had a black mayor early. And even in the at the funeral, one of her friends got up and said she worked for Stokes, the first black mayor. And she talked about how she tried to make sure she got all her cousins, all her friends hired, and she tried to make sure that every opportunity she had to be helpful to her community, she was. And so often we don't get a chance to talk about, the little things that that generation did, as well as the big. We definitely hear the Martin Luther King stories, but even if you think about Martin Luther King, that's actually a little bit before our parents. Our parents were teenagers when Martin Luther King passed. When he was murdered. Let's be clear on that. So our parents were, teenagers when that. So they came of age in a promise after the 64, 65, all the civil rights bills that were passed. They were told that, look, the United States has done some things wrong, and we're going to change those things. And we're going to do everything and give you everything that the Constitution and all these laws have promised. And what we ask in return is, you to have confidence in that we're going to do that. And you give us your most precious and valuable thing, and that would be us, the children. And they gave, their children to a so-called integrated society, a society where there was no longer apartheid, or was it de jure segregation, or was it de facto? It's one of those two, but it's the segregation that we know that the law actually, as opposed to the one that's a social thing. And with that being said, in many ways, the society, the system betrayed our parents. They said that they were going to take care of us, but as you know, the mass incarceration skyrocketed after the 1970, like 71, 72. From there on, the drug epidemic, AIDS, all the things that happened once, we were told that everything was going to be okay and that the society had changed. We were faced with some, again, y'all think about, there was weapons in our community, Mac 10s, Uzis, things that you would see in the battlefield, crack cocaine, a plant grown in South America. And nobody in my neighborhood had a passport, let alone understood customs or how to, transport commodities from faraway places. But yet those things found their place. Found a place in our neighborhoods, and our parents had to parent through that without without a roadmap, without a recipe book, without any instructions to say, this is how you deal with crack cocaine in the neighborhood, or automatic weapons in the neighborhood, or the government reneging on a check that said, if you come and you take all these, get these degrees, and you go through the schools that we send our children to, you will also have access. When our parents were passed over for raises and not promoted, they still had to come home and take care of us, and give us a bright outlook on the world, and not make it doom and gloom. And even though that they actually experienced, I remember my father, I didn't want to go to school. And I said, I was sick. I said, I don't feel good. He said, do you think I feel good every day I go to work? Man, I got my butt out of bed. I went to school. I think I had a perfect attendance. I don't think that was one of. I mean, I had perfect grades, but definitely had perfect attendance because that was something. Again, that generation, they instilled in us that work ethic, that it was important that no matter what the situation was, that you give it your best, and with that due diligence and our faith. My mom was very good with the faith, and we all went to a vacation Bible school and all these things, and just now going through these funerals, these are some of the things that kind of come up, and you start reflecting on this life that we have and how we all know that there's a end date for this part, and that spiritually that this is a part of a journey. And if we look at it like that, maybe there's a way to put it in better perspective, where we can kind of say, this journey, which will again transition to another type of journey. That might be me trying not to say end, but this part of it is definitely ending. But to think that we just disappear, I think some of this is when talking to your friends and talking, or us talking amongst ourselves about our loved ones that we've lost. I think that's some of the things that those are some of the things that we think and contemplate uh, as we think about this thing, death and life, and how they intertwine. And then I think another thing that came up, especially when you got friends and family that's super smart, and everybody's always, this financial literacy and talking about the different life insurances and healthcare, as well as those things that we need to make sure we financially take care of. I'll be very candid. Lately, I really see this capitalist system as being very problematic, where the interests of capitalism versus healthcare. Healthcare should be something that everyone has a right to. We should all have the opportunity to live well, even if we make mistakes and bad choices. I'm one of those people. So I don't think it's, well, only for those who did everything they were supposed to do. Well, if everybody was going to do everything they're supposed to do, you probably wouldn't even need a robust healthcare system. But as long as we are allowing, this sister broke down this thing that was so compelling. She said, there was decades that Hollywood and the media promoted smoking cigarettes, and they knew full well that cigarettes were not helpful. There was even doctors talking about how smoking was okay. And then, fast forward, decades later, people dying of emphysema and all these other things. I think in many ways, if we look at what a capitalist society will do in order to for profit, it will sell McDonald's and I will eat it, and it will sell cigarettes even though I don't smoke. People will smoke them, and we can call it a free society, but we also might be saying there's a society that may be quite predatory, where literally the health and the wellness of the people might be sacrificed for the few that actually control these things. And I think when you look at life insurance or the health and the hospitalization, there should be a safety net. And one of the things that we strive for with I Love Black People, where we actually ask as many of you out there to share your healthcare providers that are Black friendly, that treat us with dignity and respect, where you have a doctor that's not going to treat your parents like, you know, they don't deserve to be here any longer. We recently dealt with some of those things with family members, where the healthcare system is very dismissive, looking at Black life, and how if they have a low impression of Black people, well, then their expectation of their quality of life is probably low. So we got to be, we have to have agency. We have to step in, and my good friend, who that's why he was at his mom's side the whole way when she had several strokes. He wanted to make sure that at every turn that she was being treated well, and that those doctors knew she wasn't here by herself. So I think it's important to have the financial literacy conversations, but I think sometimes we get caught up in conversations that are band-aids to a bigger problem. As much as we think life insurance and all these things are important, we need to get to the root of it. Like, we have people who are literally pushing for a system that benefits only the wealthy, and the masses don't have access to all the insurance. Does that mean their quality of life should be low as they get older? If life expectancy is increased, should the quality of that life diminish so much based on how much money you have in a society this rich, where you have satellites and people on the moon and shooting rockets to Mars? We probably could actually do that differently. And I think some of these conversations around death and our mortality, for the sake of our children, the sake of the folks that are coming behind us, do we want this to be a gamble where you're trying to get into the put your bet on some insurance to get out of here, or should it be human for everyone, no matter what their status, to be able to leave this space, this physical space, with dignity and respect? And what do we do to make that happen? For all of Black people, what we do is, again, if we're building a safety net of Black friendly healthcare, what we see ultimately is a global safety net of Black caretakers, or caretakers that respect Black folks, where we could create our own healthcare system, where it would be composed of people who do have the level of compassion that's necessary to care for folks who may not have what they need. And we can literally, with all the minds we have in the room, as much as we're trying to figure out how much we should spend on term or whole life, I think we could also put maybe not all your eggs or all your brain on it, but come up with ways that are sustainable, that could help everyone or more people. And they call them mutual aid societies. If you get a chance, even some of the insurance products or ideas that you see, many organizations were founded to say, look, if we don't stick together, when we get old, it's going to be a burden, and we may not be able to sustain ourselves. But if we literally know that we're all going to get old, and then we can start doing something collectively, so that if and when something happens, we'll have a safety net to protect each other. And those are some of the things that I think are important. Like, how do we make it so that we're at least thinking of solutions beyond the confines of a capitalist system that says, profit is everything. And if you can be helpful, that's nice. But we're going to evaluate your quality of life or who you are as a person based on how many zeros you have behind your name. So again, I think those are very important things to discuss. We got to talk about the economics, the money, trust versus wills, how to, again, protect that financial nest egg in a way that makes sense. And, even we got down to talking about different caskets. Do you buy a casket from Costco, or do you go to the funeral home and get the casket, or do you get it from the cemetery and the plots? Like, there's lots of pieces. And I definitely want to have some folks on the show to really speak to, these different pieces. We were even thinking about, from the details of when you're looking at the program for the funeral, what are your parents' interests, or who would you want to sing, or what songs would you want to sing, or what scriptures or would you like? We had some friends, some good Muslim friends, and they was like talking about how they got to bury their folks real quick, and they, instead of a big fancy casket, some of them just wrap about 3 times, wrap the body, or put like in a box. And again, a lot of this is probably state to state, jurisdiction to jurisdiction, on how you can, what can be done to properly bury your loved one. But I think these are all things that, when they actually come up, the tricky part is that they come up at a time where you're literally dealing with the mourning of the death of your loved one. At the same time, there's a big financial responsibility, as well as a time commitment, and just a grieving that you're doing. So emotionally, you're dealing with something that is the clock is ticking. Even these funeral homes, they're clear. If you don't have the money in this many hours, we're not going to move nothing. So these are the type of things that I think could be best while we're in a level-headed situation. And I know it's hard. I know it's hard for me to bring these things up, but I thought it'd be important as you know, right in a bright sunny day, like this is the time we talk about real life issues and the things that we all are going to be able to face. At the same time, be able to celebrate that generation that brought us into existence. So again, I think all these things are so important. Let's again stay together, work together and figure out best ways to make it happen. Again, iloveblackpeople.com. Check out, download the app, use this as a safety net to help protect each other from racism and Afrophobia. And as I always leave you is in these words, I am because we are. And that's in life and after death. So praise God for our ancestors. Thank you.
This is I Love Black People Radio on HUR Voices, Sirius XM, Channel 141. I Love Black People is more than a radio show. I Love Black People is a call from our ancestors to protect us from racial profiling all across the world. Go to iloveblackpeople.com and become a member today. Membership empowers you to live fearlessly and protect Black people globally from racism and xenophobia. Join us today and become a member of our global network with an online global green book with Black-owned and Black-friendly businesses to protect you and your community. Membership is free, and with you, we will become 10 million strong worldwide. I am because we are. Special thanks to AFLAC for supporting I Love Black People Radio.